So we make decisions on purchases largely emotionally. Oh, this is going to make me feel good. If I buy that video game, I'm going to get hours of fun playing that. If I buy these shoes, I'm going to feel real dope when I get compliments on them. And every time I look in the mirror, I look down at them and wipe them or whatever it is, it's going to make me feel good, right? But maybe you got a light bill to pay. Maybe you got a car note, right? Managing money wisely, the lust of the spirit will say, well, I'll just ask the church for the rent. And everything else, I'll just say that I got covered. Maintains good health. And there's a lot that goes into that, right? The lust of the flesh will say, man, I'm tired. I don't want to exercise today. Man, I'm tired of eating this diet food. It's bland, and I don't want to eat this. I want to eat something else, whatever it is. But there's ways all around this type of behavior, right? So let me get Sirach 6 and 18.
This is the book of Sirach, chapter 6 and verse 18. My son, gather instruction from thy youth up, so shalt thou find wisdom till thine old age.
Now, of course, we understand that chiefly every scripture I bring out today is speaking about the commandments. But guess what? A lot of these behaviors and these fruits of self-control fall under commandments of the scripture, because the whole Bible is profitable for correction and instruction in righteousness and reproof. So scriptures we're going to bring out can relate to your everyday task. A lot of times we still tend to look at this Bible as a mythical type of book. And it's not. It's reality, right? It really is the instruction for us to way to live our lives. And that goes down to every level, right? I mean, especially you read the book of Sirach, there's so much in there that talks about everyday behavior, right? You look at Tobit and the lessons that he taught his son, right? And there's so much going on there. So it says, my son, gather instruction from thy youth up. We should have the discipline and the foundation to build these fruits of self-control by desiring instruction, right? Hey, I want to learn this. I need to know this. I want to pick up this skill. Come on. Read it again.
My son, gather instruction from thy youth up, so shalt thou find wisdom till thine old age.
And it says, and you will find wisdom till thy own age. Because what's happening here, he's letting you know that instruction is a lifelong process. From your youth to your old age, you should always gather instruction. You should always seek to learn. You should never sit down and be complacent. Come on.
Come unto her as one that ploweth and soweth, and wait for her good fruits.
So it's letting you know that it takes work to get that wisdom. It says you need to come her as one that ploweth. What's a plow? You use that to go ahead and make sure that you cultivate the seed and everything. You line it up, you get it ready so that the seed takes root, right? You plow the ground so that you can go ahead and place your seeds. It's the same thing. You got to prepare your spirit. You got to prepare your mind to receive that instructions. So it says, when you come unto wisdom, you need to come unto her as one that ploweth and soweth. So you need to make space for the knowledge, for the wisdom, and you need to cultivate it with seed, right? Come on.
For thou shalt not toil much in laboring about her.
And it says, basically, it's letting you know, be patient. You got to put the effort and work in, and results take time. So I gave the example of the schedule. So many people are so adamant about not doing a schedule or a budget. And there's a lot of emotional reasons behind that. That's why I say it's a spirit of the flesh. It's a lust that's behind that. Because these are things, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you have these very distinguished taste about, well, that looks new and it doesn't look like it would be appetite, so I don't want to eat. Some of y'all grown and you're like that. No, I don't want to try that. I don't like the way it looks, right? And you don't want to try different things or whatever. And then you try it and you find out, well, man, this is pretty good. I've been keeping myself away from this for a little while. Same thing with doing the budgets. Maybe you don't want to do a budget because maybe it'll reinforce how broke you really are. Or maybe it'll actually let you not have to be a victim and just blame everything on poverty and whatever it might be. Maybe you don't want to do the exercise because, you rather sleep and relax and that feels better to you. But guess what? You'll sleep better and relax better if you're in better health. When you exercise, you sleep better, you move better, you function better, right? So it says you got to put in the work and wait for her good fruits. You're going to get it. And you won't toil much in laboring. Trust me, it's going to make things easier. Come on.
but thou shalt eat of her fruits right soon.
You're going to see results sooner than you think. Take the time, do the task that's required for these type of behaviors, and you will see the results. Read on. We're going to read down to 31.
She is very unpleasant to the unlearned.
If you're bruto, if you're unlearned, it says it's unpleasant to you. I want to do a budget. Nah, that's too complicated. I don't need a schedule. This is what works for me. No, it don't go that way. It says you're unlearned. That's wisdom being brought out to you. There's so many examples of successful people that have done things a certain way. Look, there's a system you could put in place for this, that, and the other. It says, but no, it's unpleasant to those of you that are unlearned because you don't know what you're missing. Come on.
He that is without understanding will not remain with her.
And if you're without understanding, you're not going to want to stick with it. That's why it says you got to plow and sow. You got to be ready to receive it, and you have to be ready to cultivate the knowledge that's there. Put it into application. Come on.
She will lie she will lie upon him as a mighty stone of trial, and he will cast her from him ere it be long.
Right, so it's going to feel like an extra weight. This is extra stuff. I don't need to do this stuff. Why I got to be so conscious about how I speak. All these different things that you see on here. And there's many more, but I like the way these are summarized, right? And it says it'll feel like a heavy stone to you, like a trial. I don't want to do this. I don't want to try that. Anything new, it's challenging at first to learn. But I'm telling you, time and again, if you stick with it, I have a unique perspective in that I teach self-defense. And let me tell you, I see people come in there, they're making fists like this, they're throwing punches like that, right? And they don't know how to move right, nothing. I teach them how to move in like their fighting stance. It's terrible. And then, I can't laugh at them. I mean, I find a way to do it in a different way, but I can't laugh at them. Tobias back there cracking up because he's thinking about himself. And it doesn't even take that long, but if you're consistent with it, it never ceases to amaze me, the change that some people are hopeless. There's some in there that I'm like, my gosh, I do not have the patience. This guy don't even look like he knows how to tie his shoes, let alone try to defend himself. But as a teacher, it's very rewarding to see the fruits of your efforts. And I get to see that in the more realistic fashion as I teach self-defense, because I see people come a long way. And it's like, man, and then they start to see it. And it's frustrating for them at first. But when they start to see the results of it, it's like, damn, okay, this is good. And guess what? It creates more new habits. It creates better. It creates more conviction, more discipline. Remember that word? It creates more discipline in how you handle yourself and how you move forward. Same thing with exercise. With anything new that you're learning, you got to get yourself to a point where you spend enough time with it that it either becomes enjoyable or automatic, where it actually feels unusual to not do that behavior. And you've kind of flipped it on its head, because that's what you're feeling in the beginning, right? Feels like that heavy stone on you. You don't know, gosh, this is so burdensome. But then you got to work on it just long enough so that it actually feels weird when you don't do it. And then now you've started to turn a corner. Come on.
For wisdom is according to her name, and she is not manifest unto many.
Hey, like I said, there's some people that are hopeless. You ain't just gonna, right? And this also goes with the scriptures as well, right? Hey, 2/3 ain't gonna get it. 2/3 of our people, right, are gonna be cut off and die. Read on.
Give ear, my son, receive my advice, and refuse not my counsel, and put thy feet into her fetters, and thy neck into her chain.
It says your commitment to learning something new needs to be like you basically imprison yourself to it. You have to stick with it. Come on.
Bow down thy shoulder and bear her, and be not grieved with her bonds.
Come on.
Come unto her with thy whole heart, and keep her ways with all thy power.
There's another scripture that says, in anything that you do, do it as unto God and not unto men. And that goes for every single thing that we do. I know a lot of y'all don't hate your jobs. Guess what? You should be the employee of the month every month. Your picture should be up there every month, right? Not at the expense of keeping the laws, right? You can't be like, oh, well, I stay late on the Sabbath. If I do got to work, I'm not requesting days off to keep the commandments, none of that stuff like that. But you should really let your light shine in every way, right? Because we are the best at everything. Come on.
Search and seek, and she shall be made known unto thee. And when thou hast got hold of her, let her not go.
Right. It says, when thou hast got hold of that wisdom, don't let her go. You should search and seek for it all thy life. Come on.
For at the last thou shalt find her rest, and that shall be turned to thy joy.
So it's what, like I was saying before, it becomes something that you enjoy, because at the last, now you get it. Oh man, this is what I was missing out on. This actually makes sense. Come on.
Then shall her fetters be a strong defense for thee, and her chains a robe of glory.
And it flips. Now it's a strong defense, and now it's a robe of glory. It's not a burdensome stone. Come on.
For there is a golden ornament upon her, and her bands are purple lace. Thou shalt put her on as a robe of honor, and shall put her about thee as a crown of joy.
Why? Because the way you do that is not by boasting of, oh, look, I committed to working out. Look at how ripped I am now. Look at it. No, now you have some wisdom to share with someone else, and you're the example of what that application is, right? So, right, we're dealing with personal type of stuff here, but this is the same way the process of repentance works. This is why your light should shine towards men, because you got people, friends, family waiting in the wings for you to, oh, you still with that Israelite stuff, right? Hey, and some of them will never repent, but some eventually will. Some eventually will. Hey, I'll look at my brother-in-law, Lord's will he endures. He was in the cut for a long time. He was the last one of all of them to and it wasn't until he saw the longevity, right? Gosh, what, 11, 12 years, something like that, right? It wasn't until he saw the whole longevity of it, and then he took a trip out here and saw how we actually live it. And he was just like, damn, right? And there's a lot of factors. The Most High knew when his time was to start looking at it. And Lord's will he endures, right? But sometimes your actions, the reason it becomes that robe and whatever is because now you have something to be able to show to somebody else, right? So it's not done in arrogancy. Let's get Proverbs 25 and 28.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 25 and verse 28. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls.
Self-control, rule of your spirit. You have to have fruits of self-control, the results of self-control. Because you ask somebody, oh, you so man, yeah, I'm in control. I know how to speak. I know how to rock. I know this. I know that. It says, listen, if you have no rule over your own spirit, it's like a city that is broken down and without walls. And that means it's indefensible. That means something's going to come. So, for example, you don't maintain good health. Do you have any defense when sickness comes? No. You're more susceptible, right? You don't maintain a mastering of your moods. You're going to get yourself fired at every job the minute your boss talks to you funny, right? All time, or you might get yourself locked up, restraining reactions. You got no self-control. You punch everybody in the mouth every time you hear something you don't like, right? You got to get yourself killed or locked up. So it's like a city that has no walls. You're broken down and you got no defense. And remember what we just read in Sirach, when you embrace wisdom and whatever, now you have a defense, right? Now those fetters become a defense, not a burden. Now it becomes something, an ornament to be proud of in those times. So your rule of your spirit is another way to say self-control. You must exhibit self-control. This whole walk is about self-control. Right? That which I do not. Right? Romans 7. Let's get 2 Timothy 2:24.
The book of 2 Timothy, chapter 2 and verse 24. And the servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach, patient.
Right? And all of us are servants of the Lord, right? So it says we must not strive. We must be gentle unto all men. And that don't mean you don't defend yourself. Don't mean you can't talk like a man to somebody when you need to. But what it's going into is mastering your moods, watching your words, restraints of actions, using wisdoms in your interactions. But then what I really want here is patient. It says that we must be patient. Can you pull up the definition of that? So it says able to accept or tolerate delays, problems, or suffering without becoming annoyed or anxious. Patience is an actionable thing. Not because you tell me you're patient. Not because you tell me, oh, well, you don't know what I'm thinking. It's clear. You could see that you're annoyed or anxious. You're not tolerant. Look, it means tolerant, long suffering. So Patience has action behind it. It says you're able to accept these things without becoming annoyed or anxious. I can tell you, none of us has that 100% on lock, but many of us think we do. Many of us walk around and think we do, because part of it is not just action, but it's also an emotion, right? That's why it says controlling your mood, mastering of your moods. And mastering of your moods, I like that better than control, because mastering means you can feel the emotion, you can feel the mood, but you know when and how to act on it, depending on the setting, the environment, the appropriateness of it. You don't just let things blurt out your mouth, right? So to master your mood, right, is going to be something that's going to give you so much ease and peace, right? It's a step towards having that peace of God, because you don't deny those emotions, right? You're entitled to every emotion that you feel. It's what you do with it and how you let it rest in you that creates a difference. Click on similar words. Okay, look at that. Tranquil. I like that one. Calm. I was neither of those just now, but I was trying to be. Imperturbable. That's a good one. Understanding. See, I did display some of that. I said, if you're having technical, right? Put your mask up over your nose. You're right next to Zerubbabel. Considerate, right? Diligent. So there's a whole bunch of words there for you to understand it. But the key point I want you to get on that is patience means you don't become annoyed and you don't get anxious about it. And because how many times you speak, hey, be patient, relax. I am relaxed. No, you're not. You're obviously annoyed. Don't tell me to relax. Hey, and that's a trigger word, right? Like if you work in like customer service, they're like, don't ever tell a customer to relax. Dun, dun, dun. Karen's going to come out. You say relax. Let me get your manager. Right. Don't relax. Let me get Ecclesiastes 7 and 8. Ecclesiastes 7 and 8. Ecclesiastes 7 and 8.
The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7 and verse 8. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof.
It says, better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof. Come on.
And the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit.
So patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. And behind the lack of patience, having that annoyance, having that anxious behavior is a prideful spirit. That's why you get so defensive when somebody says relax. Or you say, oh, you're not being patient. Hey, relax. It's something that shows. The scripture tells you your countenance doth reveal what's really going on, despite what you're saying. So it says, better is the end of a thing than the beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Another way to look at this is, same thing when you're going through the process of learning these steps for your moods. It says, better is the end of it. The result of the things that you do to get good health is better than the beginning of it, but you got to be patient, right? You got to be patient, see it through to the end. Same thing with a budget, right? I'm talking about the most sensitive ones, because almost everybody here is probably on board to say, yeah, I'll try to work on my mouth and my spirit. But a lot of y'all don't. I'm telling you, I'm going to see. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to ask some of y'all, so you know what? I'm not even going to tell you, because some of y'all are going to start Googling stuff. Some of you going to Google stuff. I'm going to ask you a question later, and I surmise that there will be some confusion. Read on.
Verse 9, be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools.
So you people who always are so quick to anger, you don't have patience, you're easily annoyed, you easily get anxious over things, you're hasty in your spirit to be angry, it says you're a fool. It says it rests in the bosom of fools. It stays there with you, right? And I'm going to bring several scriptures about wrath and anger later. The Bible's abundant with them, because that one is one that'll get you in trouble every time. Every time. And remember, you have to master that mood. Doesn't mean you won't get angry, right? It says, don't be hasty in thy spirit to be angry. And then sometimes there's righteous anger, right? It's a time to have some indignation, to have some anger come out, right? But it says anger rests in the bosom of fools, meaning it's ready to pop out for anything, any cause, any charge. And that's not someone who's mastered their moods. You think you're a well-rounded, grounded individual that has control of yourself, and you're not. A lot of y'all walk around and y'all big babies. right? Babies that throw tantrums. Just sometimes it's an anger tantrum. Sometimes it's a grudge tantrum. Sometimes it's a vexation of spirit, whatever it is. But a lot of y'all throw tantrums. The most extreme I've ever seen was an Edomite when I used to work in wireless. There was something with where we were in Long Island, and the reception wasn't good there, right? And there was nothing we could do for him. Man, the guy sat there in the chair throwing a fit like this. He must have been 85 years old, and he was big. He was like he was like 6'5", like 250 plus. Sat there, I want this to work. I said, damn. I wasn't dealing with him. My manager, I wasn't the manager at that time. My manager was. I said, man. I said, I'm going to take my lunch. So I'm getting out of here. I couldn't believe I said, gosh. I said, this guy's really throwing a tantrum and stuff. And that's what you see with Karens. They're throwing tantrums. Like the whole thing with Karens and stuff is they're throwing fits because they don't master their moods. They don't know how to deal. They don't know how to operate. And they're full of a lot of pride for other reasons, right? So the pride of their heart have deceived them. They think they're better than us. Deep down inside, that's why they get at us for trivial things, right? Deep down inside, they can't bear to see us having fun, living life, enjoying the same privileges they do. They don't like it. Anyway, 1 Thessalonians 5:14. I digress.
The book of 1 Thessalonians, chapter 5 and verse 14. Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly.
Not mastering your spirit, not having self-control. That's an unruly spirit. That's unruly. Come on.
Comfort the feeble-minded. Support the weak. Be patient toward all men.
You have to be patient. So again, patience is actionable. It says you have to be patient towards all men. I don't know if I put down unruly for us to bring it out yet. Did you? No, that's later. We're going to bring that out. The definition of unruly. I usually do it in the order. So it says, be patient towards all men. This is an attribute. So I'm laying the foundation for some of the things that we can look at that'll help us with those steps. Go back to the picture and leave it up there. That'll help us with those fruits of self-control. One of the key ones is patience, right? That's going to be the setup for all these things that you need to deal with, is mastering patience above all of these, right? And that means you got to open yourself to the wisdom to learn that stuff. Let's get Ephesians 4 and 1.
This is the book of Ephesians, chapter 4 and verse 1. I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that ye walk worthily of the vocation wherewith ye are called.
Right. And of course, chiefly worthily is dealing with the most simple application of the commandments, right? So you start with the Sabbath, you start with the things that are very easily actionable. But then you get to the ones that deal with emotions, things like what we're reading here, the fruits of self-control, that those become problematic because remember, the Bible, first scripture we went to, describes it as a war that's going on within you. And within a war, there is turmoil going on, but you got to find peace within that war that's raging. And it'll always happen. Remember, we also read in Sirach that it says, from your youth up until that old age, you have to continue to seek instruction to work on these things and deal with these types of behaviors, right? So it says, but we want to do things that make us worthy of the vocation wherein we're called. Come on.
With all lowliness and meekness and with long suffering, forbearing one another in love.
The scripture says that we need to do this with lowliness and meekness, which goes into basically acknowledging what you don't know, accepting that you don't know it, acknowledging where you fall short and working on that. And then in relation to dealing with others, it says with long suffering. That's another way to say patience. Forbearing one another in love, meaning you're not going to be so easily annoyed, get so anxious, get so angry with your brothers and sisters all the time, right? Come on.
Endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace.
And these behaviors will go a long way in helping you to do that. Starting with the top one. The mastering of moods is so appropriate that it's up there first. I don't know where this came from or who wrote it. Well, you just saw it on the internet, Tobias? One of the sisters in the body had it. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. I give it a 9.5. It says mastering of moods. We must master the moods. And it says we must endeavor, meaning it's ongoing, right? To keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And that's going to come as a result of the mood mastering. Stay in Ephesians 4, jump to verse 31.
Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice.
Remember malice, it's going to come out later when we deal with some definitions, all right? But you can just make a little note, mental note or a note. We're going to talk about the malice piece again, because malice is another one that it has different manifestations. And I think in our mind, we think malice and we think purposeful intent to harm someone, and that is part of it. But there's a subtle way that happens too, and we'll bring that out when we get to that definition part. But in mastering of moods and your restraint of reactions, because restraint of reactions is going to be largely dealing with others, it says, let all your bitterness, let all your wrath and anger, all your clamor that's in you, any evil speaking that you might have about a brother or sister be put away from you. Put it away from you means don't entertain it. This is another way that you learn. These are steps to get these fruits of self-control. Remember, it said we got to plow and sow. After you plow and sow, what happens? You reap, right? And the fruits come forth. So we're going over that plowing and sowing so that then the fruit is going to be this. You'll be a master of your moods, a master of restraint of reactions. And some of the seeds and work that you got to do is this. It says be put away from you. Put all these types of behaviors away from you. Come on, next verse.
And be kind one to another.
And be ye kind one to another.
And be ye kind one to another. Tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you.
Malice also falls under grudge, right? And what will happen is, this is why the next verse he talks about forgiveness. He says, you must forgive. And forgive, but be aware, depending on what it was. But you can't purposely, again, restraint of actions, right? If somebody steals something from you, you forgive them. How many of you are not going to feel susceptible, like to be suspicious of them, right? It's going to be in your spirit to do it. And you're right to feel that way because they once wronged you. But if you start to act on that behavior, right? Ostracize them. I'm not going to say treat them different, because you will, right? You're not going to leave certain things out, right? You're not going to put things, because obviously they have a covetous spirit. You're not going to put things out to tempt them, right? So there is a measure of trust that's lost there. Forgiveness doesn't mean just move forward with that type of behavior. Well, let's say somebody insults you. It doesn't have to be thievery or whatever it is. But forgiveness, right, deals with being aware of what they're dealing with, but then having that patience, right, the mastering of the mood and restraint of reactions to not overly put it in front of them that they can't overcome that either, right? Because if not, then you're holding a grudge. So you watch, you're wary because you know, right? Shame on you, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? Mm-hmm. They tell you. So you got to be aware, right? Can't be foolish with that. But you have to, there's a way that you go about it. And forgiveness means you're not holding a resentment about the individual inside of you for that. Let's get Colossians 3:8. And these are all things, when you get to the base of this, that you should be able to then reference. Because a lot of times somebody will tell you, it's kind of like, all right, again, I'll use self-defense as an example because it's easy for me to break it down. I tell you to punch something, and most people can go and do some semblance of a strike on a bag, but, and it resembles a punch, but it's not the same thing, right? So you need to be able to break it down and show them this and say, hey, okay, this is the way you make the fist. This is the way the rotation. All right, you want to add power to it. You rotate the hips. You hit here. You're hitting with these knuckles, so on and so forth, right? All of those takes little steps to do it. The end result is that you're able to punch. But anybody can punch right now, right? Same way that it says anybody can say that they have restraint of actions. But there's attack. This is a skill. The fruits of self-control are a skill that needs to be cultivated. And it's going to feel a certain way. This is skillful behavior. When you have a vocation, like we read in Ephesians 4:1, a vocation, right? I don't know. Back in the day, they used to call like trade schools vocation. So to be a plumber or an electrician was a vocation. To be a hairstylist or nail technician or whatever they call it was a vocation. Those things are skilled behaviors, right? Just because somebody can, you know, I'm sure you can do some semblance of some electric. Like I can do some, I could wire a ceiling fan. I can change an outlet, right? But am I going to do it skillfully? Am I going to do it the same way as somebody who that's their vocation? No, there's a difference, right? So there's an application that needs to be there. Nope, exactly. That's why I usually rather pay somebody. So, hey, you got to know what you don't know, right? And either I take the time to learn the vocation or get somebody to do it that's going to do it right. And then I can be mad at them if it's not done right, instead of mad at myself and frustrated because I can't do anything to myself except be there and be upset, right? You know? So it's like sometimes I mess up when I paint like a room in the house, and every now and then I look at it, and I'm like, damn, man, I'm so pissed off at myself, but I can't do nothing about it. So anyway, Colossians 3:8.
The book of Colossians, chapter 3 and verse 8. But now ye also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth.
Right, so again, it says the key to mastering your mood and restraining is just put them off. Don't deal with these, right? Don't let them rise up in you. When you see them, mortify them. Well, come on.
Lie not one to another.
Lie not one to another. We know that also from Leviticus, the 19th chapter, right? Come on.
Seeing that ye have put off the old man with his deeds.
You got to understand that goes back to the flesh warring against the spirit. These behaviors are behaviors of the old man. And what does it say you should do to the old man? You have to kill him daily. So when it says to put off these things, it means you have, again, you're entitled for them to come up, but you have to continually mortify them, which means kill them, right? Come on.
And have put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him.
We must be renewed in that knowledge. Remember how it said from your youth up until an old man? That means, let's say you start to do things with health change, right? Sometimes, first they told you carbs were bad, then they were good. Then they told you fat was bad, then it was good. Egg yolks were good, now they bad. Now if you take the white out, it's not good. Now you can't eat certain types of vegetables because it's going to do this. Nuts and seeds are good, but only if you don't suffer from this, right? You must renew your knowledge all the time. You can't blanket do stuff, right? Same thing with exercise. Hey, there's some exercises. We used to do them back in the day. Like they tell you now, don't do upright rows real close. You're going to mess up and that was like a staple exercise. Or pull downs behind the neck. They say you're going to mess up your shoulders and stuff like that. Yeah. Shoulder presses behind the neck, right? And those were things that years ago we would do. If you didn't stay up on good knowledge, right? If you get injured because you're still doing that stuff, you're not maintaining good health. Right? I remember we had a brother in New York when we were on the fitness group. We had a little thing on the group because he was like, yeah, do these. And then like a lot of brothers was like, nah, you can't do these. And he was like, yo, but you understand what I'm saying? And we're like, yeah, we understand what you're saying. And now they're saying that ain't good for you. Like, you can hurt yourself or whatever. It's like, I used to play football, man. I used to, like 20 years ago. So you got to continue to increase that knowledge, right, as you go along. Let's get Titus 3:3.
This is the book of Titus, chapter 3 and verse 3. For we ourselves also were sometimes foolish.
Now, those of us who remember the scripture tells you to covet earnestly the best gifts in a brother or sister. That's a righteous covetousness. So if you see somebody's good at maintaining good health, that's somebody you should be humble enough to be able to say, hey, let me go and try to get some information from you. Somebody who's good at managing money, right? Let me go and try to get information from them. Same thing with any of these that we go through. Someone good with scheduling, right? Because we ourselves weren't always like that. Some people look at me, oh, yeah, Joshua manages money well. Man, I filed bankruptcy when I was 23 years old. I didn't grow up, but we grew up. I remember some brothers, they don't, you say this and they don't realize it because they look, you know what it is? Y'all see the end and you don't see the work that it took to get there, right? So some people may see my car and be like, oh, damn, he must. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. All right. We grew up on welfare and food stamps. I packed bags and delivered newspapers for work. All right. I worked in the Bronx Zoo. No, not with the animals. It sounds a lot more cool than it did to say you worked in the zoo. I worked slinging fried chicken and burgers in the zoo kiosk, making animal-shaped fries. Hot as hell. You know what? They gave you your break when you started your shift. That was your break. No, that's how they gave you your 30. Illegal as hell. I went in there. You would have to get there at 9:15. From 9:15 to 9:30, you did the meeting, setting up the day. And then from 9:30 to 10, you had your lunch break. After that, you worked from 10 to 6 straight. Hot as hell. Hot as hell in the damn kiosk. It's hot outside, humid in the summer. They cooking behind. So if you want a cashier, they cooking behind you. Forget it if you had to go into the kitchen. It was terrible, right? So I had a path where I wasn't always good with money. So, here it's talking about, obviously, different things in the spirit. It says, for we ourselves also were sometimes all of these. I was broke ass. I remember I got my first Target credit card. I went to Target. I said, man, I'm going to furnish my whole apartment. It's a free, and you know Target, right? You go in there for like toilet paper and forget it. Like you spend like 4 hours. I was coming out with televisions and everything on my credit. And it wasn't that I didn't think I was going to pay the credit card. I didn't understand how interest worked, how it compounded. I said, I could pay the minimum payment. And then when I realized that because I didn't understand percentages really, because they were too busy showing me freaking X and Y instead of proper math to help me in the real world, right? And before I knew it, my minimum payments were like $500 a month on just one credit card, and it was hard for me to make the rent. I remember hiding from the landlord, I'd be like, they turn off all the lights. I would sit in the dark so he wouldn't see that I was home, so that he wouldn't come asking for the rent, right? Or I would get off work and I couldn't go into the house until I knew he went to sleep. So because I didn't want to run into him for him to ask me for the rent money and stuff, right? But there's different things that some people are good at, some aren't. So it says, such were some of us. Read that again.
For we ourselves also were sometimes foolish, disobedient, deceived, serving divers lusts and pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful and hating one another.
All right. So it says some of us were in that. Some of us were hateful people. Some of you are still hateful people. Remember when I did the thing on contemptible people? It's a hateful person. And we broke down what makes a person hateful, right? I hope some of y'all contemptible people were able to glean some stuff from that and realize the things that you can change to not be so contemptible, right? Like some people are just useless, right? So it's like they're useless and they're not even good to, because you can slide if you're friendly, right? You ever meet somebody and you're like, man, they don't do jack, but they fun to be around. They don't lift a finger to do nothing in here, man, but they make you laugh while you busting your behind. So you tolerate them, right? Or maybe somebody you really don't like that much, be like, damn, but that brother puts in work though. He may be an a-hole with how he says things and stuff sometimes, but that brother, he's dedicated. He does stuff like that. And we have people like that. Like it's a type. So they're everywhere. They're in every congregation. They're in your jobs. You have family members that you can classify that way. So it says some of us were hateful. Some of us were hating others, right? And we don't even know why. You know how much effort it takes to hate somebody? It don't make no sense. Get to 2 Corinthians 2 and 7. These are all little glimpses, like I said, into the types of things that you should be aware of, which will help you master your mood, your restraint of reactions. 2 Corinthians 2 and 7.
This is the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 7. So that contrariwise, ye ought rather to forgive him and comfort him, lest perhaps such a one should be swallowed up with overmuch sorrow.
Right. So again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. You forgive and don't hold things against somebody. You're conscious of the type of behaviors that they're guilty of, and you make efforts to avoid situations where that may become an issue. But it says, hey, somebody that's really trying to work towards themselves, you don't want to burden them too much with this stuff, right? Come on, read on.
Wherefore, I beseech you that you would confirm your love toward him.
And how do you confirm your love towards somebody? By your actions, not just your words. Can't be like, oh, well, yeah. No, I don't got a problem with you. But then every time your behavior shows like you got a problem with them, right? You say one thing, but you do something else. It says, I need you to confirm your love towards them. Come on, we're going down to 11.
For to this end also did I write, that I might know the proof of you, whether ye be obedient in all things.
Proof is made by action. Proof is made by action. And you have to show forth the proper behaviors. It all goes to self-control. That's the fruits of self-control. Come on.
To whom ye forgive anything, I forgive also. For if I forgave anything, to whom I forgave it, for your sakes forgave I it in the person of Christ, lest Satan should get an advantage of us.
So he says, you got to realize that even if you don't want to, you don't have enough control of your mood, that you're like, damn, but I don't want to forgive him. Like, that's the devil when you want to embrace those emotions. When you want to stay angry, when you want to stay that way, when you want to stay in a victim mentality, because that's another thing that's not controlling your moods. Everybody's against me, this, that, and the other. It says Satan gets an advantage over us with those type of behaviors. So this isn't just about, because some people will be like, well, no, I'm good the way I am. I don't need to better myself. Satan is looking for an advantage over us in any of that stuff. So it's very important that we exercise the fruits of self-control. Eve couldn't control her spirit in wanting to desire more knowledge. Adam couldn't control his spirit towards his wife, knowing full well. So knowledge isn't always, you can know something and still not do right. So you have to build up self-control. You have to build up self-control. Read on.
For we are not ignorant of his devices.
It says we are not ignorant of Satan's devices, nor we should be. These are all avenues for Satan to creep in and try to get in the midst of us as an individual and as a body as well. Let me get Proverbs 12 and 16. Yeah, go ahead. Give him the mic.
Shalom, ladies. Shalom. Can you say that again about you saying knowledge? It sounded like you were saying we have to have self-control because you may know what to do.
You can know right and wrong and still do wrong. You can know and have knowledge of a situation and still not do right. It says you need to forgive anyway. You need to move forward anyway. Master your emotions because, right, somebody that is emotional, I think a lot of times we tend to automatically throw them in the mix that they must be simple and not intelligent. And I don't know, it's like a mechanism that we as people have where we try to make excuses for people's behavior rather than just call the spade, right? So to speak. Sometimes people know what they're doing is wrong and it's not right, and they'll still act on that behavior because the emotion is so strong. So logic rarely outweighs emotion for us. That's really the short of it. And it goes back to the same thing with shopping, right? How many of us are income tax rich, right? Income tax time, and 3 months later we broke. And how many can honestly say you made a dent in your debt, you furthered your education, you paid your back rent, whatever it was, right? Versus I bought the TV, I bought the kicks, I took the vacation with the tax money, right? You know that you should be doing something better, right? That's the largest lump sum of money that most people get at any one time, and we piss it away, for lack of a better term, most of the time, right? So that's an oversimplified thing of the knowledge. So basically, knowledge doesn't outweigh the emotions. Emotions is always going to mess you up. It's always going to mess you up. Remember, Adam was a god. He named everything. And he knew what Eve was doing was wrong. But because he loved her, he did it. And here we are today.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 12, verse 16. A fool's wrath is presently known, but a prudent man covereth shame.
So it says a fool's wrath is presently known, meaning they just show out with their, there's no restraint. There's no mastering of the mood. There's no control of the reaction. And what it says is that you're a fool if you go against it. Read the whole thing again. 12:16.
Yes, sir. A fool's wrath is presently known, but a prudent man covereth shame.
It is shameful to be outwardly angry, especially when it's not that righteous anger. It is a shameful behavior is what it's telling you. We know that anger, it says, is in the bosom of a fool, sorry. And now it's taking it a step further. It says if you're prudent, you don't show that shame. It's shameful to show that anger. It's shameful because that's the tantrum. And that doesn't just apply to anger. That applies to any type of behavior that's really not appropriate to show out that way. You're entitled to the emotion, but that falls into the restraint of reactions. See, mastering the mood means you're aware of the emotion that you're feeling and you understand the reaction that's going to come out of you, but then you don't do it or you adjust it for the situation. Like anger can be a bad thing in a fight or it could be a good thing. It can be a bad thing because if you give in to the rage, you forget your form, you're not seeing things right, you're overconfident, you don't handle the situation the right way. Or if you use that and channel that and you're still able to stay focused, right? Now you can use that as motivation and aggression to survive an encounter that you're defending yourself, right? Again, I speak into self-defense because I do that a lot. So it helps me kind of relegate that. It's easier for me to use that as a similitude. But you can apply that to anything else, right? And you can insert different emotions. Let's get Proverbs 14 and 29.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 14 and verse 29. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding.
Right? No, you're never going to find a scripture that says he that doesn't get angry, he that doesn't get wrath. God gets angry, right? He gets righteous indignation, but it also says our God is long-suffering. And he's definitely long-suffering because it says if he wanted to, if the Most High, right, we're made in his image, so all these things are godly emotions and things like that, right? If the Most High did not have restraint of reactions, remember, it says that he can make stones Israel. He could say, to hell with all of y'all, put us all to death in an instant, right? In a number of ways, because he's the master of terrors, right? And then take some rocks. There's plenty of rocks outside, right? They landscape in Arizona with rocks and make all those Israelites and say, here we go. And he could, but yet he experiences all these range of emotions and he doesn't. Christ being an extension of the Father, right? Meaning the same mind, same spirit. It says we're building ourselves up into that. Like we read earlier, worthy of the vocation that we call, building ourselves up in that in Christ. It goes into that. Christ would get angry, and sometimes he would lash out, like he did in, was it John, where he made the braids he went and, right? And he displayed patience. He channeled his anger in that situation because he said, look, man, I could just start flipping tables, but I want to make a whip. So he went and made a whip. And he stayed angry. He harnessed that anger. And then he went and he beat the crap out of everybody and flipped over the tables, right? Yes, your Jesus did that, all right? So you have to understand that these things are okay to feel them. It'll never say don't have these things, but it says be slow in this verse, right? Read it again.
He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding.
He says you can be someone of great understanding and you're slow to wrath because you know how to not let it. You have restraint. You have rule of your spirit. You've mastered your mood. You identify and you restrain what the reaction might be. Come on.
But he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly.
You can be hasty of spirit, and it says you exalted folly. You're a fool, and it's a shame. So what you're displaying is, hey, I'm going to show this. I'm going to show that. Hey, some of y'all, I'm going to tell you, I don't know. I know in New York, a lot of the Jake sisters is like that. They just love to show out their anger. Like they just ready to start taking the earrings off, put the Vaseline on the face. They ready to go out and just offer nothing, offer stupid stuff, right? Chicago like that too. See, he been to New York too, so you know what's up, right? I don't know. Maybe it's different out here. Was it more mellow out here? Like it's more mellow. He's like, yeah, it was. That's why y'all so. I mean, I think we're becoming a little more like y'all now. When we first got here, though, right? Man, I know. I've spoken about it before. Their eyes would light up at us, like for the stuff that we would say and do sometimes. They were like, damn. Hey, you know who still be doing that? He make me laugh. Officer Gamaliel. Gam that was here, that he's in Cali now. He should be like, damn, Gab. The hell? Be like, bro. He'd be like, yo, what the hell? You exalt your folly though, right? So that you see it all the time. You see, like, look at Black Friday when they show our people in the videos, right? People look at the way they did the riots. I don't know if you saw the ones. I saw ones up in New York, and man, they robbing all the stores, exalting their folly, and then beating each other up for the stuff that they robbed. You had the one fat boy. See, y'all think just because they fat that you could beat them up. Do you know how many punches fat people could take? Bro, they punched him for like 15 minutes. Right. Bro, I know he gave him one slap. You heard the wind move when he did it. Ooh, bah. It's them skinny brothers. It was like three skinny brothers that looked like Isaac, and they were trying to punch him. He was like, "What's that? The wind?" He went, "No, the wind hits harder than that. Get out of here." Gave him one mush, right? But exalting their folly out of their anger, their rage, and everything that's there. It says a man of understanding is slow to that wrath, meaning that behavior doesn't show out, right? And again, we're not gonna be that way all the time, right? I can only practice so much restraint with my wife at home sometimes, right? Sometimes I get upset and I gotta show out, and I gotta right? Look, see, she's nodding the head, yes, she's in agreement. See, a husband and wife that agree together, right? She's like, yes, you do, yes, you do. Sometimes I can't take it, and I gotta say something, right? And it don't always come out the right way. I lose my understanding for a little while. I know better, right? I've been in this long enough, but I'm susceptible as well, right? So it says, hasty of spirit means you lack restraint of actions. Proverbs 27:3. I'm going to try to move through this. I got a lot more that I want to hit. Proverbs 27:3. I'm going to try to go through some of these quick.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 27, verse 3. A stone is heavy, and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both.
Right, and there's a reason the scripture talks about anger so much, right? Because, again, it's something that the Most High experiences. We're made in His image, and it's hard for us to deal with it. All of us on some level deal with it. I don't know if you've seen the movie Anger Management, right? And he really didn't act, or he really wasn't like an angry guy, right? But his anger was more like internalized. So it wasn't that he mastered it, right? But it was like it was showing like frustration, right, with his anger, right? Versus it coming out, acting out. So some people are like that, right? And you would think, oh, no, I don't see them as an angry person. But inside, they're burning, they're on fire, right? And there's all types of other things that happen as a result of that. We're going to read verse 4 too. Go ahead.
Wrath is cruel, and anger is outrageous. But who is able to stand before envy?
Right, because these are emotions that have synergy. They're close to each other. In anger, you can be cruel. Envy can bring out anger and cruelty, and vice versa, right? They have inverse relationships with each other. So it's letting you know, right, that these things are problematic. Let me get the definition of envy. I think I said the Google definition. A feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, or luck. So it says a feeling of discontented. So you're discontent or you're resentful, aroused, and it's not just possessions. A lot of time we think envy and we want what people have. Sometimes somebody's qualities make you feel a certain way, right? Or perceived luck, right? I would say it could be their blessings. Go to the other definition that I tell you pull up, right? Okay. It says a feeling of discontent or covetousness with regards to another's advantages, success, or possessions. And you see that in a myriad of ways, right? Sometimes it's material. Sometimes it's somebody's job, their position, the fact that somebody's maybe more likable than you. Maybe they got, people treat people different. Nobody, it's really, if you think about it, kind of be boring if everybody treated everybody the same. Foundationally, everybody should be considered the same, but be treated the same. That's not right. Christ had favorites. God has favorites. He favors us amongst all the nations that He made. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's just ways that it's carried out, right? And then it says ill will. That's a obsolete term, but right, meaning it's outdated. But it says ill will. But if you have a feeling of discontentment with regards to somebody's advantage or success, you're suffering from envy. And a lot of times people are like, no, I don't envy. It's subtle. It's subtle the way these things come out. And to master your moods, it means acknowledging what mood you're experiencing, right? Let's go to Sirach 27:30.
The book of Sirach, chapter 27 and verse 30. Malice and wrath, even these are abominations, and the sinful man shall have them both.
It says they're abominations. They're abominations. And it says you're a sinful man if you have them both. It says a sinful man will have them both. So if you have both of these things and you don't have control of them, you haven't mastered them, It says you're a sinful man. There's something going on there that you're not able to deal with this properly. Because a lot of this falls into having discipline, which is a Holy Spirit, right? We'll read that later. It says it's a Holy Spirit, and it says it will not reside in a malicious soul. It's not going to stay there. Wisdom doesn't stay there. Discipline doesn't stay there. This is why you got some brothers, some sisters, they just can't get right. Something sinful in their mind, in their spirit, or in their actions that doesn't allow them to move forward. Let me get Proverbs Sirach 30 and 24.
The book of Sirach, chapter 30 and verse 24. Envy and wrath shorten the life, and carefulness bringeth age before the time.
Hey, it's saying it's a detriment to your health. So guess what? Now you're seeing the synergy between all these fruits of self-control. Envy and wrath shorten the life. You want to maintain good health? Master your mood. Restraint of reactions, right? We're going to get into watching your words, right? There's overlap between all of them. All those things will help you. And this is why I said I saw this and instantly I said, wow, this is good. These all have synergy with each other. It makes a lot of sense. They all go together. Now get Proverbs 29 and 8.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 29 and verse 8. Scornful men bring a city into a snare, but wise men turn away wrath.
And that's ultimately how you deal with it. It says, wise men turn away wrath. That's why it says a man of understanding is slow to anger. You turn it away. You don't deal with it internally and externally. Don't be pulled into somebody else's anger and give anger back. And when we get into the tongue, we're going to read that later where it talks about a soft answer turneth away wrath. So it says, wise men will turn wrath away, not feed into it. As a matter of fact, let's get Proverbs 15 and 1. We'll go to it right now.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 1. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger.
It's hard when somebody's being angry with you for you to answer them in a normal tone and to give a soft answer. It's difficult. What, you got a question? You want to say something? Oh, okay. So it's difficult. It's difficult. But it says it's wisdom if you give the soft answer back. I've said this in a different way before. If somebody's all up, angry, shouting, speaking loud, you continue to talk to them normal, and they're going to realize that they messed up. They're going to be, damn, because they're just going to be left shouting at them with themselves. Right? Yeah, that's judo. That's judo. That's Jedi mind tricks. That's what it means. But give a soft, that's wisdom to give that back. You know, and then again, there's context to that, right? You know, you in the street in camp and somebody getting crazy with you, right? That's different. But if you also want to de-escalate, again, it takes skill. It takes skill. A lot of brothers are ready to like show out at camp. Yeah, I'm tough. Man of valor. Oh, get the whole camp shot up. Right? Hey, we had brothers like that. Like they would look to get arrested. They would look to be antagonistic so that they could say, I got arrested for the gospel's sake. Right? Yeah. Yeah. We had brothers like that in IUIC when we were in New York that would roll like that. Go on the train and be belligerent. Teach. They would get up in the middle of the train, because you know how like you see performers like on TV, right? If you're from New York or you're familiar with New York, people either come through the panhandle or they come in and they do a dance, a song, some gymnastics, whatever it is. The dude with no legs on the skateboard. I know that's from Trading Places, but that's legit, right? Yeah, that was a legit dude, right? Yeah, so, that's an old movie. A lot of y'all, they're like Trading Places. All the millennials are like, what's that? Yeah, Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd. It's a good movie. But you'll also, so like basically people come and they try to collect money. We had brothers that would go stand in the middle of the subway, and it wasn't so that they could spread the word. It was so that they could start problems on the train because they were trying to get arrested so that they could be like, look, I got arrested for preaching the gospel. No, you got arrested for cursing people out and being a nig. Someone was going to say something else? I saw a hand back there.
Shalom, leadership. How do you know that? How do you find that I guess, I mean, I understand it comes with wisdom, but how do you find that understanding where, because I'm not the one to sit up there and yell all the time.
Uh-huh.
So how do you use that anger and bottle and still get it out without being condescending, if you will?
Go ahead.
Praying fast, brother. Because that's what I had to do.
Yeah, if you have it on you real strong,
Praying fast, man.
remember the scripture says this kind goeth not out by praying and fasting. And you don't just pray and fast and not have it in your mind, right? That's a prayer and a fast that you do with mindful intent of what you want the Most High to resolve in you. It's meaning you got to focus on that. Because I think sometimes even with fasting, we focus on just the not being thirsty and not being hungry and not your mind on what you're afflicting your soul for.
You got to really want it, man. I'm serious. You got to really, really understand that everything that these scriptures that are coming out now, man. And if you think about it, man, if you ever gotten to that level, man, when you're done with it, you feel foolish. You do. That's why the scripture mentions that. It's like, damn, I could have really handled that a lot differently, and I would have sounded more smarter.
Right. And then if it's not something that's too burdensome, really it's just awareness is the way that I'll say it. Emotions blind you, and it takes away the rationale, right? I know the sisters ain't gonna like this, but women are very emotional. Men are emotional too. Women are very emotional. And when they're in an emotional state, you cannot rationalize with them. They will not hear any amount of logic. It doesn't work.
And that's why when a brother's emotional like that, it's not a good look, man.
Right.
It's not a good look
Right.
at all. You're
Right.
like, should be sitting on that side.
Right. And then now you've condescended. Now you've condescended to the way they are, right? Because remember, it says they're the weaker vessel because of the emotion involved. So you can't let yourself kind of get to that. So shuff up is kind of usually good. Just don't, just don't curse at her. Right. I'm guilty of that sometimes, but like I gotta be real mad to curse at her. Like real mad. Like, right? Like I don't really curse at you, right? When I curse at you, you like your eyes kind of widen up, right? Yeah. I don't really curse at her. But when I do, she knows like she crossed the line and she's like, all right.
This is you know what you also got to put into perspective. Whenever you're gonna go to that place, it's advice that I've always gave to my kids, and I had to learn it myself. Ask yourself, take that split second and ask yourself, what are going to be the consequences of my reaction?
Yeah, and that all goes back to
Split
awareness. Second. In that awareness, it's kind of like in TV where time freezes and you play out every scenario, right? It's like you seen like the Sherlock Holmes movies where he looks at a situation and he's like, all right, let me do this and I do this and then he figures out the right way to react or respond. You kind of got to slow yourself down and just have an awareness. It's mastering your mood, bro. It's not something that just comes. You have to practice it consciously each time. And then, of course, let's not forget the spiritual aspect. Pray and fast for these gifts to be cultivated in you.
Right,
remember, it said ploweth. You need to be like somebody that ploweth and soweth. Right? Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Just real quick, especially somebody that grew up in the streets. We grew up defensive. You grew up not taking those shorts, like we used to say back in the days, from nobody. So it's going to be your natural reaction. Especially, that's why Jake is the way they are. That's why if you look at that spirit predominantly in the scriptures talk about, obviously you went over many scriptures because it's talking about our
it's talking about our people, right? It's our characteristics.
We naturally like that. So you fight for yours. You go for yours, right? That's the mentality you have growing up. I know in Chicago or any other real ghettos other than Arizona that goes through that.
Yeah. No, Chicago gets respect.
Chicago gets much respect, yeah. Detroit.
South of Baseline don't get no respect. They try too hard.
Mesa?
Mesa don't get no respect. They try too hard.
I'm messing with you. I'm sure there's some tough people here, man. I'm just fooling with y'all.
Right, because not everybody's from here. They're probably from Chicago and New York, and they moved down there. Go ahead.
So, like moving, like, because my thing is, I'd rather not say anything and just let it go. And
that's a tactic, but that's a
right. But then that leads to like
that's a novice tactic,
right?
Yeah, it is a novice.
You got to be able to face it. You can't always ignore it. Yeah. And it's okay if you don't say anything and you revisit it to resolve it. But if you don't say anything and just never address it, it's never gonna get resolved.
Yeah, it's gonna fester, man.
Yep. Yeah. That's what happens is that root of bitterness that the Bible speaks of. It takes root if you just ignore it. So ignoring it is a good tactic, but like if you always got to leave, if you always got to walk out the house, you've not developed. Like at some point that got to stop, and you got to be able to rule your spirit to be able to sit there and have the dialogue and not move forward.
Right, it's like the bully, right? you get your butt kicked, and then finally you go ahead and smack them.
Mm-hmm.
He got respect for you now. Usually they stop bothering.
Right. But we're not talking about smacking your spouse.
No.
We're talking
We're
talking about smacking the spirits.
I'm using that as an example. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, some people, bro.
It's the payback.
I guarantee you, at least one brother heard. Oh, I can smack her.
I did not say that.
Read that again. Proverbs 15:1.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 1. A soft answer turneth away wrath.
Right. So a soft answer turneth away wrath. Watch your words. That's a tactic as well in dealing with that. So don't give anger back. Remember, the scripture says don't render evil for evil, right? You're just gonna wind up with a whole mess of the situation. Let's get James 1:19.
The book of James, chapter 1 and verse 19. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath.
So these are some more answers to your questions on how you deal with these things. How do you deal with these types of situations? It says, let every man be swift to hear. Listen. Remember, I said if I'm angry and stuff, I can't hear what she's saying, and then I can't use her own words against her, right? And I'm not saying it to be vindictive, but I mirror back the things that she's saying to me. And if I do that in anger, she won't hear me. If I do it calmly, sometimes she'll hear me and she'll realize, no, but that's not what I meant. All right, so then maybe you need to take a few, breathe, and come back when you can. And then that's her rationale for texting, because she's calm and she can write it out and say what she wants to say. So it does come across clearer, because then I don't hear emotion with it, but we can't be doing that all the time. So it says, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Hey, sometimes you just got to let them talk. Hey, let me tell you, just for fun, sorry. Just for fun. Just let them keep talking and don't say nothing, and just look at them and nod your head and see how much more upset they get. No, eventually you gotta answer them back, right? But what I'll tell you, a lot of your sisters would be frustrated as hell with me. I know when I've pushed her like too far, but it says be slow to speak, slow to wrath, right? Swift to hear. Come on, read.
For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God.
Right, and what it means to give honor unto the weaker vessel is in most situations, men, the burden is on us to deal with the situation correctly, right? It's not an excuse for their behavior, because they have to account for every idle word and what they do and what they stand. Because, sometimes she come up with that stuff too. Well, I'm the weaker vessel. Be like, you're being evil as hell right now, telling me that stuff, right? Look, brothers is nodding. They know, right? They drop that on you, right? Well, I'm the weaker vessel. So you fix me. Yeah, I'll fix you all right. Do damage to the solar plexus, crack the third rib. No, let me stop. Let me get the link on listening that I put up. Let's get the link on listening. And then we're going to move into watch your words. All right, listening skills. So make that a little bigger for me.
Listening skills. Listening is the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process.
Right? So listening, swift to hear, goes into listening. Listening is the ability. It's an ability, which means it's a skill to accurately receive and interpret messages in the community, meaning there's a process. Communication is both ways, right? And there's a process that goes on in your head. You have to receive it and interpret the messages. Come on.
Listening is key to all effective communication.
And this goes for everything, not just, I know we tend to go to the spouse thing because that's a very common thing amongst Israel, right? You have issues with the spouse, right? It says listening, and I'm going to tell you something, not just you brothers, right? We should listen, but the women don't listen. They don't listen. They don't want to listen. Then they pretend they listen, and to them, it just can't be that simple. You're like, well, what do you want? I just want a sandwich when I come home every day. No, because I bet you if I do the sandwich, you're still going to be like this and that. Have you given me the sandwich yet? Have you tried it? Try it for like a week. And then if you don't see the difference, then you can tell me something. Try for the rest of your life. So listening is key to all effective communication. This is why the scripture said be swift to hear. That is the key. Not I'm going to say this just the perfect way. I'm going to say this just the sweetest way. Listening is the key to all effective communication. Come on.
Without the ability to listen effectively, messages are easily misunderstood.
And I'm of the mind that miscommunication, and I believe the scripture supports that in what it's saying here by being swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath, is the biggest issue in general to when we have issues amongst ourselves, is miscommunication. And it stems from not effectively listening. Come on.
As a result, communication breaks down and the sender of the message can easily become frustrated or irritated.
And that's what you see in an argument, because it means there's not effective listening going on between the two parties, right? It says you can get frustrated or irritated. And then this is where mastering your mood comes into play, because, right, if you're patient, you don't feel annoyed or anxious or anything about that stuff. Come on.
If there is one communication skill you should aim to master, then listening is it.
And this is what I mean by awareness to your question, Jehoiakim. That awareness is, don't let whatever the emotion is overcome you so much that you don't sit there and try to listen, right? And I don't mean listen, oh, you got to hear her out, everything. Because if she's just going off being belligerent, that's not something that you need to listen to, right? And that's different. But I'm talking about if there's a productive dialogue going on where we're trying to get something accomplished, right? And I'll do that sometimes. So, okay, so what's the point? Do you want to resolve this or not, right? Or whatever. Come on, listening.
Listening is so important that many top employers provide listening skills training for their employees.
I've been through a bunch of those in various management roles. It's very important, and it is true. Come on.
This is not surprising when you consider that good listening skills can lead to better customer satisfaction, greater productivity with fewer mistakes, and increased sharing of information that in turn can lead to more creative and innovative work.
Right. And they're talking about it from a customer's perspective, but you can apply this, right, to any type of relationship. And notice the part where it says by listening more, you get an increased sharing of information, not less. Because sometimes you'll be like, oh, well, I want to say my piece, right? You're so focused on what you want to say that you don't listen, right? And you zone out. So read on.
Many successful leaders and entrepreneurs credit their success to effective listening skills. Richard Branson frequently quotes listening as one of the main factors behind the success of Virgin.
That's that adventurous billionaire, the Edomite, that he owns like Virgin Atlantic and Virgin and all that stuff. Come on, read on. Read the box.
Effective listening is a skill that underpins all positive human relationships. Spend some time thinking about and developing your listening skills. They are the building blocks of success.
We just read, it says, be swift to hear and slow to speak. Listen more, speak less. What do they say? You have one mouth and two ears, so you can listen more, right? Jump down to good listening skills. Read from there.
Yep. Good listening skills also have benefits in our personal lives, including a great number of friends and
a greater number
of friends and social networks, improved self-esteem and confidence, higher grades at school and in academic work, and even better health and general well-being.
Yeah, because listening is not just in the moment that you're hearing the conversation. Listening involves the interpretation and processing of information that you receive. Like, don't go into things with your biases, right, sometimes and stuff like that, right? You got to be able to listen, hear things out. Come on.
Studies have shown that whereas speaking raises blood pressure, attentive listening can bring it down.
Hey, how about that? Speaking raises blood pressure. So when they there letting their blood pressure go through the roof, you just listen and you'll be nice and calm. And you just be right? I know one of the things that my wife always tells me, she's like, I don't know how you can act like nothing just happened. I don't want my blood pressure to go up. Come on.
Listening is not the same as hearing. Hearing refers to the sounds that enter your ears. It is a physical process that, provided you do not have, I can't see that.
Any hearing problems
happens automatically.
Now, listening is not really a term that you hear in the Bible. They use the word hear, right? Listening is like a newer word. But so now hearing means just sound coming into your ear. But if it says slow to hear, obviously, you know, they're talking about listening in the Bible, right? Come on.
Listening, however, requires more than that. It requires focus and concentrated effort,
This is why I say you got to be aware. Come on.
both mental and sometimes physical as well.
Because some of these women are physically draining. So it takes physical attention and effort, right? Come on.
Listening means paying attention not only to the story, but how it is told.
So that's another thing. It's not just what you're saying, it's how it's being said. Come on.
The use of language and voice.
Right? Are you cursing a bunch? Are you raising your voice? Is there sarcasm in the voice? Come on.
And how the other person uses his or her
Is
body.
she like this when she's talking to you? Right? Well, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just trying. Right? Come on.
In other words, it means being aware of both verbal and non-verbal messages. Your ability to listen effectively depends on the degree to which you perceive and understand these messages.
And it's funny because I remember there was a brother in 19th Avenue. He's one of the ones that left up out of here. He came up to me one day because I guess every now and then, your brothers have seen it. I'll say something to y'all, right? Like, hey, stay in the spirit or this. And then some of y'all raise the eyebrow like, how the hell he knew what was going on or whatever. And a lot of that, to me, and he asked me, he was like, oh, how do you discern spirits? A lot of that has to do with just being able to look at this type of stuff, right? And see that. Yes, there is a spiritual aspect to it. You might get a feeling or whatever. But it starts with being able to identify all these different types of listening skills that they're talking about. That's why, like, when we do a counsel, I love to, just like we were reading last week, how you're supposed to let the accused have a voice and speak for themselves. I love that part of things. See, Ananias, the priest, wasn't in the spirit when he smacked Paul. Because if Paul was really guilty, I let him speak. Trust me, they're going to condemn themselves. You learn more from asking questions and letting someone answer and letting someone speak than you talking. Trust me. Let them speak, right? Go ahead.
Listening is not a passive process. In fact, the listener can and should be at least as engaged in the process as the speaker. The phrase active listening is used to describe the process of being fully involved.
And it's funny because there are times when I'm not good at that. And that could, like, my wife's talking to me and like I hear her, but I'm not paying attention to anything that she's saying. It's like zoned out. And she gets like upset about that. And it's true. Like in those I'm not talking about an argument. Like I should probably be present, right? And listen to her. Or we do that with the kids real easy, right? We tell them, oh, that's nice, sweetie. Meanwhile, they're telling you like the house is on fire, right? So you're not really listening, right? Come on, read that. Yeah.
The most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we ever give each other is our attention.
And this is true. Right? If you think about it, the most important thing you could give somebody is your attention, right? Your undivided attention, so to speak, right? Meaning you're not thinking about something else. You're not, hey, let me listen to you and hear what you have to say, right? Scroll down. Is there anything else on that? Okay, let's read that. Listening serves.
The purpose of listening. Listening serves as a number of possible purposes, and the purpose of listening will depend on the situation and the nature of the communication.
Right, so there has to be context to it. Scroll down so he can get the full list up there and just read those off.
Yep. To specifically focus on the messages being communicated, avoiding distractions and preconceptions.
Right, so this is one of the purposes of listening. Come on.
To gain a full and accurate understanding into the speaker's point of view and ideas.
Come on.
To critically assess what is being said. To observe the nonverbal signals accompanying what is being said to enhance understanding. To show interest, concern, and what does that say? Concentration. To encourage the speaker to communicate fully, openly, and honestly. To develop a selflessness approach, putting the speaker first. To arrive at a shared and agreed understanding and acceptance of both sides' views.
Come on.
Often our main concern while listening is to formulate ways to respond. This is not a function of listening.
So if you're waiting to figure out how you want to respond, they say that's not a function of listening. That's actually selfish. You're trying to put yourself first to just say what you want to say despite what's being heard. because your response should be based on what's being said to you. You shouldn't be there formulating those responses. This is why they say if somebody's talking a lot and you want to, you could take a little note of stuff, right? Because somebody be like, oh, well, I say it because I want to remember what's being said. Again, that's still putting the focus on, well, I need to interject and I need to do this and I need to say that. That's not a function of listening. Go ahead. We should try
to focus fully on what is being said and how it's being said in order to more fully understand the speaker. Effective listening requires concentration and the use of your other senses, not just hearing the words spoken.
Okay. Scroll down. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, read that part. For example,
one common problem is that instead of listening closely to what someone is saying, we often get distracted after a sentence or two and instead start to think about what we are going to say in reply or think about unrelated things.
Hey, that reminds me of that skit from the Chappelle Show. He said when fans come up to him, he starts zoning out and he's sitting at the dinner table and he starts thinking of the black sheep. I'm the black sheep.
I was thinking the villain could be played by Rod Stewart.
Man, I should have been a rapper. That looked like fun.
How you gonna rip it like this, son? How you gonna rip it like that, son? I don't play that because it's action.
But I need a gimmick.
Because I'm black, son. That's right, I'm the black sheep, the real black sheep. I'm the black sheep, the real black sheep.
So we have this big showdown at the foot of the space shuttle. My company is willing to offer you $12 million.
$12 million.
And he was like, what if he had hooves or whatever? And someone's talking to you and you don't think of, like, you start thinking of other things, right? Come on.
This means that we do not fully listen to the rest of the speaker's message.
Right. So they call that like selective hearing. So you'll key in on certain things that they say and not the whole context of what they said. And then again, now you get more miscommunications out of that type of behavior, right? Come on.
This problem is attributed in part to the difference between average speech rate and average processing rate.
So it is funny. It's a cliche to say we have one mouth and two ears, right? But it's letting you know, it gives you like a scientific breakdown to how we function, right? So come on.
Average speech rates are between 125 and 175 words a minute.
Right. So very eloquent speakers can speak in the range of 125 and 175 words a minute. That's a lot. That's a lot of words in a minute, right? So it says that's an average speech rate. That's an average speech rate. At the higher end would be 175. That's an average speech rate. Come on.
Whereas we can process on average between 400 and 800 words a minute.
We are built to listen. We can not just hear, we can process. So basically, if anything, people talk too slow for the way we're equipped to process the words coming in. So there's no excuse to not being effectively listening, except you're not really considerate of the person. You don't really, that's why I brought all those forbearing one another, all this other stuff first in consideration of the audience that's there. Because you're more equipped to hear and process 400 to 8, that's near 400 times, right? Because 125 at the low end, that's near 400 times, 800 times if you want to go up to there, of the words that are being spoken. Come on.
It is a common habit for the listener to use the spare time while listening to daydream or think about other things.
I know that thing happened to me a lot, right? It's like, God, okay. You there? Yeah, I'm here. It's like, come on. And then I think it's even worse now because, right, texts are even slower than speech, if you think about it, right? But then people leave the long voice notes. Let me tell you, if I see your voice note is more than a minute and a half, I'm probably not listening it to like much later in the day. Like you send me a 2-3 minute voice note, I'm like, gosh, maybe that requires a phone call or have some brevity of an economy of words. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, read the next verse. We're almost done with this.
Of course, the clarity of what the speaker is saying can also affect how well we listen.
That's true too, right? Some people are just not good speakers. They're not engaging. Maybe they're not very clear and articulate, right? Like some of y'all with the mask, and we can't hear you, right? So it's hard to pay attention. Come on.
Generally, we find it easier to focus if the speaker is fluent in their speech, has a familiar accent, and speaks at an appropriate loudness for the situation. It is more difficult, for example, to focus on somebody who is speaking very fast and very quietly, especially if they are conveying complex information. We may also
What? What do you say? Come on.
we may also get distracted by the speaker's personal appearance.
There's a saying that says, "Who you are speaks so loudly I can't hear what you're saying." I'll say that again. Who you are speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you're saying. So, for example, I used to go back in the day before the internet. You had to go into a place to get a paper application to apply for a job. Can you believe that, millennials? I had to walk around Manhattan, going in and out of stores, getting paper applications, and they were long. My hand would hurt filling them in, right? Filling out applications, okay? And if you went, just because it wasn't the job interview, you go in like sweats or whatever, and you think you're going to be considered well, you don't know if the person giving you the application is the one that's going to interview you, the hiring manager, whatever it is. It's a little different now because you don't go in physically. I use that example. But still, even now, I remember when I used to interview, like when I was still working in that capacity, and it amazed me how people would come in so casual to an interview. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care if you're interviewing to be like a short order cook. You should still come in. I mean, maybe you don't got to do a 3-piece suit, but you could still come in, hey, shirt and tie at a minimum that's the culture, right? So that's what you wear, right? And you go to the interview like that. So, because that's what's acceptable, right? That's what they see as professional. It shows that you're taking it serious, right? So personal appearance is real. I remember one time I went on an interview and I was dressed properly. Let me just tell you, so I was shirt, tie, all that stuff. I had eaten a knish. You know what a knish is? It's like a potato. It's like a beef patty, but it's not beef inside. It's a potato, right? And you eat it with mustard, right? It's real good. It's like it's an Amalek thing, but they sell them in New York, like at all the hot dog carts. It's freaking delicious. So especially with the mustard, spicy brown, not that yellow crap. And and the hot dog, but I didn't have the hot dog because I didn't want hot dog breath when I went to the interview. So I said I'll have potato breath, but not hot dog breath. Anyway, I remember doing the interview. It was for of all things, could you believe it? I know. See, Vane's right now thinking about what he told me yesterday. He's like, "Damn, man, you did a lot of stuff." Sometimes I forget the things I did. It was for a couture dry cleaning service. They cleaned all the celebrities' clothes, and we used to do Bill Cosby's clothes too. I only worked there for like 3 weeks though. I couldn't stand it. It was a factory position. I still weren't dressed up. The guy's talking to me about how important the business is because of the clientele they serve or whatever. And as I'm giving him my answer, I see him kind of like zoning out, looking at me. I'm like, oh, son, do I got like a booger on my nose? Like, what's going on? He's like, I'm sorry. You got like mustard on your shirt. And like, I can't hear what you're saying because I'm looking at the mustard. And I mean, I still got the job, but he was like explaining to me that he's in the industry of dry cleaning. His eye is trained to see stuff that's wrong and things like that. And I'm there talking to him and I'm starting to feel away. I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to get this job. This guy's not freaking. The Buster was talking like that commercial with the stain is talking. It's like a Tide commercial, right? And the stain is talking. So I say all that to say the appearance is important. Like you can't undervalue that. Like you have to put value on that stuff. And it's not just for jobs. It depends on anything. Hey, you single brothers, I mean, listen, and we're probably not going to have time to go into it today, so there's going to be a 2-parter. I'm going to go into, because I want to go into budgeting and things like that, so I'll probably go over it next week. I'm going to go into health, and part of health is hygiene. Some of y'all are nasty. You're dirty. You don't like to bathe. Your nails are dirty. It's not just your breath. Your ass stinks. Your clothes look dirty. You know how you haven't washed your pants in a long time? They start to get like a sheen on them, right? You ever seen that? And that's because like the dirt is getting like pressed into there, right? Right? I'm not getting real grossed out and stuff like that. And then some of y'all think that you're going to get a wife that way, right? Because you're going to look nice while you're courting her. And then she's going to see. And then that's the same one that's going to come and be like, well, she don't want to do certain things in the bedroom. Because you nasty and it stinks. You got. I'm not saying that. Yeah, you got SD. If you know, you know. You got SD. You got SD. You got stank. So we're gonna talk about those type of things. So appearance. So you see how like a lot of these fruits of self-control have overlap with each other, right? So it says you can get distracted by their personal appearance or by what someone else is saying, which sounds more interesting. Let's finish this up. All right, come on.
These issues not only affect you, but you are likely to show your lack of attention in your body language. Generally, we find it much harder to control our body language, and you are likely to show your distraction and or lack of interest by lack of eye contact or posture.
And this is another thing where like somebody could say, well, no, well, how can you say that? Or you just, again, your countenance reveals certain things. You can tell by posture, by body language, by certain things, whether somebody's really engaged, if they're really into you, if it's, right? So like you could tell, some sisters are good at this. They know when you're spitting game and you're full of crap, right? They're just looking at you like, okay, yeah, right? And they're like, yeah, you're not even into them like that. Come on.
The speaker will detect the problem and probably stop talking at best. At worst, they may be very offended or upset.
I was very offended or upset. He wanted, so interesting, he said that I cleaned the mustard out. He actually wanted me to start training that day, and I had to go take the shirt off and clean the mustard out before I started that day. I tell you, that was one of my, there was several that I had. That was one of my most depressing jobs. I was very irresponsible. I quit that job with no other job in hand. And I was broke I had to like start delivering pizzas after that to like try to make ends meet. I actually was making more money doing pizzas than doing that with tips and stuff. But anyway.
Hey, Kev, going back to what that says about making eye contact, right? When I'm getting on my daughter and she's like looking everywhere and I'm like, hey, here.
Yeah.
Look at me. Because I know she's not paying attention.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, here.
Well, hey, interestingly enough, with kids, it's also a different dynamic. Yes, you don't want them to zone off. You could tell if they're not paying attention. It could be based on how you're delivering the message. They don't want to look you in the eye out of fear or respect as well. So then depending on what the situation is, if you're just trying to straight discipline, then, whatever. But if you're trying to convey something, you got to, it's true. You got to talk them back and get their attention and stuff like that. So like sometimes I got to tell my daughter like 2 times. I'll tell her the first time. And I know she was distracted. So if I tell her to go get something, and then before she goes upstairs or whatever to get, I'll be like, wait, listen, what did I tell you to get? And then like she don't even remember because you'll get it. And I remember I was a kid. I used to do that, right? I used to try to do everything off the dome, and I would go and I wasn't really paying attention. And the worst was like when my mom would send me to the store and I'm trying to remember everything she wanted me to get. Yeah. And then I'm walking and I'm like, oh, I want to get pizza later. Oh, look at a new video game. Before you know it, the list was like 10 items. I came back with 2. Right? So we got bad listening inside of us. We got bad listening. Next week, we'll go into the tongue, and then we should be able to finish up. So restraint of words, and then we'll talk about money management, scheduling. They're shorter. It's not as many scriptures for that, so that'll be shorter. So we're going to talk about money management, scheduling, and health and good hygiene. All right. So we'll talk about those things and then we'll kind of wrap it up, I guess. So this one, I don't feel so bad about doing 2 parts because it's an easy break between it. But you see how important it is as far as mastering the mood and restraint of actions. A lot of this it's a skill. That's why I said it takes focus. It talks about ability. It talks about other stuff. And make a conscious effort to put those things into play. And I'm telling you, it takes a conscious effort because I can do some of it automatic. But there's times that I got to remind myself that I should be listening more actively to people and things like that. And that goes a long way in controlling situations, moods, and all that stuff like that. All right. So I pray y'all got some understanding from that.
We used to scream black power while heroin was pushed. But at the end of the day, nothing's in vain. IUIC has been given a vision. The tents of Judah has risen. Many has attempted the mission. Minor murmuring, omitting, and missing the mark. Just reading that he had the flame of fire in his eyes gave us the spark. We on Paul's mission. We out on the road. Purple and gold. From Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, Ghana, Sierra Leone. 144,000 boots banging, concrete crackling. These are our men repented at heart. The scriptures is proof. IUIC, we deliver the truth.